While Darby was in rehab, grappling with her drug addiction, she receives a call from a man named Joe, who informs her that her mother's condition is critical due to internal bleeding in her brain and has just been admitted to Salt Lake Hospital. Darby is shocked to hear this, and Joe tells her to immediately speak to her sister Devon for more information. However, when Darby attempts to call her sister, one of the workers there stops her because making outgoing calls was against the rules. Darby tries to explain to them how serious the situation is, but even after a lot of pleading, the director heartlessly refuses to let Darby make the call. Later that night, Darby knocks on the door of her fellow inmate, Jade, and asks to borrow her phone for a minute, as Jade had smuggled her personal phone into the rehab. However, Jade refuses to let Darby use her phone, so Darby threatens her to report the director about her phone. Hearing this, Jade agrees, and Darby quickly dials her sister's number and pleads for bail so she can visit their ailing mother. However, Devon rudely denies her requests, citing that she is busy in the hospital with their mother and she doesn't have time for her bullshit right now before abruptly hanging up. Darby is sad to hear this but decides to escape from the rehab under the cover of night. Sneaking past the gate, she finds herself inside a car where she finds a packet of coke. Despite the temptation, she stashes it away before hot-wiring the car with a hammer and screwdriver and speeding off. On her way, she leaves a voicemail for Devon, informing her that she'll be at the hospital by morning. However, nature has other plans, as a relentless snowstorm descends upon the area, worsening the driving conditions. Forced to pull over, Darby takes a moment to check her messages, only to find one from her sister advising her not to come to the hospital, as their mother doesn't want to see her. Darby's heart sinks at this news, and though tempted to use cocaine, she refrains and eventually falls asleep in the car, haunted by dreams from the past. After a while, a cop wakes her up and informs her that the road ahead is blocked due to heavy snowfall, and advises her to either head back or wait at the visitors center. Darby opts for the latter and follows the officer's car to the center. Stepping inside, she is met with 4 people, a middle-aged couple, a peculiar man, and a sleepy ass. Darby sits down to have a coffee while trying to connect to the internet on her phone, only to realize there's no network. She asks if there's any Wi-Fi available, but Sandy informs her that there isn't. Determined to find a signal, Darby steps outside, only to hear screams coming from a minivan parked nearby. She approaches the van and brushes off the snow from the windows, only to be horrified at the sight of a little girl tied inside. Trying to open the van's door, she finds it locked. Suddenly, she is terrified to realize that the minivan belongs to someone in the visitor hall, and she must be careful not to attract attention. Returning to her car, she tries to call 911, but there's no signal. Suddenly, she notices a man behind her in the side mirror, sending a chill down her spine. Stepping out of the car, she finds it's Bill, who is also searching for a signal. Darby acts normally in front of him, not wanting to raise any suspicion. She adopts the same approach upon returning inside, uncertain of who the minivan belongs to or who the kidnapper might be. With nothing else to do, Bill suggests playing a card game, and everyone agrees. While playing cards, Darby starts asking casual questions to everyone to glean information about the others. She learns that Bill is an ex-Marine officer, his wife Sandy is a nurse, and the other 2 men are named Ash and Lars. Through conversation, Darby figures out that Lars is the imposter. She excuses herself and heads straight to the bathroom to call 911, but once again, there's no signal. She tries to send a message but to no avail. With no other options, Darby decides to save the girl herself. She grabs a utility knife from the bathroom and heads towards the van. Using the knife, she manages to open the van's door and begins to untie the girl's hands, only to discover that the girl is sick with a high fever. Suddenly, she hears Lars approaching and quickly hides inside the van. Lars enters, visibly upset at losing the card game. He tells the girl that she's lucky to be here because the outside world is full of liars and cheaters. He notices that Jay has knocked over the cardboard blocking the rear window, and he scolds Jay for it before fixing the cardboard back in place. Darby considers attacking Lars with the knife, but she notices a gun in his back, sending chills down her spine. Lars remembers he forgot to bring snacks for Jay and goes back inside to get them. Darby promises Jay she'll return to help before leaving the van, but she leaves the knife behind. When Lars returns with snacks, he grows suspicious upon noticing footsteps leading away from the van, and the door is also unlocked. Meanwhile, Darby stealthily returns to the bathroom, and when Ash checks on her to see if she is okay after being in there for so long, Darby pulls him in. She tries to tell him about Lars, but suddenly Lars arrives, following footsteps, and Darby pulls Ash in a kiss to avoid raising suspicion. After Lars leaves, Darby tells Ash everything, stressing the urgency of rescuing the feverish girl. Ash is shocked to know that and comes up with a plan. Darby will go to the van to save the girl, and when Lars follows her, Ash will sneak up behind and attack Lars with a nail gun found in the storage. Darby agrees and sets the plan in motion. She enters the van and begins to untie the girl's mouth, only to be asked, "Where are the men?" Shocked, Darby asks how many men were there, and the girl reveals 2. Darby looks out the window and is horrified by what she sees. Lars and Ash are together, heading towards the van with an intent to harm her. However, when they reach the van, Darby is nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Bill becomes suspicious due to the frequent comings and goings of everyone. On the other hand, Ash manages to locate Darby and holds her at gunpoint. He takes Darby's phone and deletes all her messages to 911, after which he reads through her personal messages and discovers her mother's hospitalization. Darby accuses him of being a child molester, but Ash angrily states that he is not a child molester, it's all about money. His plan is to ransom from the girl's father, after which they will ship her back to her house. Darby insists that the girl is sick and needs help, but Ash counters by stating that the girl has Addison's disorder, in which if the girl gets too excited, her body will overdose on adrenaline, making Darby's intervention dangerous for the child. Just then, Sandy arrives, and Ash warns Darby that if she tells anything to anyone, he will shoot everyone dead before leaving. Sandy becomes suspicious and tells Darby that if she needs to confide in someone, she can trust her, but Darby remains silent. Later, as everyone gathers around the table again, Darby subtly hints to Bill that Ash and Lars are up to something wrong and that they have guns. Suddenly, Darby sees that the little girl has freed herself. Ash and Lars also notice her, and Lars quickly makes an excuse to leave. Darby then leaves as well, followed by Ash, who heads towards the bathroom. However, Darby launches an attack on him, but Ash manages to subdue her and begins to choke her. Lars also arrives and reveals that the girl has fled towards the hiking trails, and they need Darby to capture her. Meanwhile, Darby notices that the key to Ash's van has fallen, and she secretly stashes it away. Following this, Ash and Lars force Darby at gunpoint to the hiking trail, where Darby calls out to Jay. However, from their conversation, Darby realizes that they aren't kidnapping Jay for ransom but rather to sell her. With this sudden revelation, Darby shines the flashlight into their eyes and bolts into the darkness. Ash fires a shot, but it misses, and Darby manages to hide behind a tree. Bill is alerted by the gunshot and goes outside to investigate, only to find the little girl lying unconscious in front of the house and carries her inside. Shortly after, Darby also rushes inside, panting, and reveals the truth about Ash and Lars to Bill and Sandy. Ash and Lars threaten them from outside that if they don't hand over the girl, they'll come in and shoot everyone. Thinking quickly, Bill covers all the windows with curtains and warns them that if they step through that door, he'll shoot them dead, even though he's actually unarmed. Terrified by Bill's threat, Ash and Lars hesitate to enter. However, Jay's health continues to deteriorate, and it becomes apparent that only the 2 men have the medicine for the sick girl. They offer a deal: if they give up the girl, they'll provide her medication. Sandy advises Bill to accept, as the girl will die without medication. Darby also agrees but reveals that they can't escape as she has their key. Bill suddenly comes up with a counter deal: if Ash and Lars provide the medication, he'll return their van key, allowing them to leave safely. Ash checks his pockets in a frenzy but is enraged to realize that he lost the key. To everyone's shock, the 2 men return to their van and retrieve a gas can, intending to set the house ablaze. Sandy is terrified to see this and pleads with her husband to give up what they want, as she doesn't want to die. However, Bill reassures her that no one is going to die before instructing Darby to hide the keys. He then berates the men, calling them the most foolish for planning to strand themselves at the crime scene. Ash retorts, accusing Bill of foolishness for risking his life for a stranger, but Bill tells him that this is what he did in his entire Marine career. Suddenly, Jay wakes up and recognizes Sandy, who used to work as a maid in her house. She was from a wealthy family and used to torment Sandy by forcing her to dance and posting it on TikTok. Shockingly, Sandy reveals to the perpetrators that Bill doesn't have a gun, leaving Bill stunned. The 2 men come inside, and it's revealed that Sandy had conspired with them and helped kidnap Jay, all for money. They take Bill and Darby at gunpoint, but Bill is still reeling from the betrayal of his wife. Sandy tearfully explains that all she did was for their future, and their only plan is to ransom the girl for some money. However, Darby reveals that they aren't planning to ransom her but to traffic her. Sandy is shocked by this revelation and tries to persuade Ash that Jay's father will pay them whatever they want, emphasizing that they don't need to sell her. However, Ash ignores her and demands the van key from Darby, but Bill warns Darby that if she reveals it, everyone present will be killed. Hearing this, Ash shoots Bill dead. Sandy panics at the sight and attempts to pepper spray Ash, but Lars intervenes and takes the brunt instead. Enraged, Ash shoots her as well. He then drags Darby to the wall and pins her hand with the nail gun, then takes Lars to the bathroom to tend to his pepper-sprayed eyes. Darby seizes this opportunity to ask Jay to pass her the hammer. Jay hands her the hammer, but before she can act, Ash returns, prompting Darby to quickly conceal the hammer. Ash breaks the news to Darby that her mother has passed away, citing a message from his sister. However, he also discovers a message from the police stating that they are on their way to the scene. In a hurry, Ash threatens to nail Jay as well if Darby doesn't reveal the whereabouts of the key. Faced with no other choice, Darby reveals the key's location, which she had hidden outside the bathroom under the snow. Ash hands Lars the gun to keep watch on the girls while he goes to find the key. Darby quietly instructs Jay to turn off the lights, assuring him that Lars doesn't have the courage to pull the trigger. Despite Lars's shouts, Jay reluctantly approaches the switches, and Darby uses this time to indulge in drugs to reduce the pain. The moment Jay turns off the lights, Darby manages to remove the nail from her hand and ambushes Lars from behind with the hammer. Ash hears a gunshot from inside and rushes in, only to find Darby holding Lars hostage at gunpoint. He demands that Darby release Lars while pointing his nail gun at her. However, Jay intervenes and strikes Ash's hand with the hammer, causing the nail gun to discharge directly into Lars's head. Ash rushes to Lars' side while Darby and Jay take advantage of the chaos to escape. Ash assures Lars that he'll get him to a doctor, but Lars slips and falls face first onto the floor, which drives the nail deeper into his skull, resulting in his immediate death. Ash is left devastated by the sight and seeks revenge. He steps outside and shoots at Darby's car as she attempts to escape, and one of the nails punctures the tire, causing the car to crash into a pole. He then returns to the house and sets it ablaze before heading back to kill Darby. However, at that moment, the police arrive at the scene, and the officer orders Ash to stay away from the car. Ash feigns innocence, but Darby emerges from the car and shoots Ash. The policeman instructs Darby to stop, but she attempts to shoot him again, only to be shot by the officer in return. Her gun falls to the ground, and Ash retrieves it before shooting the officer. As he prepares to kill Darby, she pulls out a screwdriver from her pocket and thrusts it into Ash's throat, killing him. Despite her injuries, she crawls over to the officer's body and uses his radio to call for help. The scene then shifts to a few months later, and we find Darby back at the rehabilitation center. One day, a visitor arrives to meet her, and to Darby's surprise, it's none other than her sister Devon, who had been ignoring Darby for ages and has now come to take her back home. Subscribing to the channel will make my day better. See you all in the next video. Till then, take care and goodbye.